Welcome to the Parent Guide to GCSE podcast. Our awesome guest today is Caroline Jacobs, who's an adolescent wellbeing coach for teen boys and young men. This was originally recorded as a live Facebook event, and this can be found on our Parent Guide to GCSE and Parent Guide to Post-16 Facebook pages.
Good evening. So we are here this evening with Caroline, who's come to talk to us about why it's important to keep conversations going with your kids. She is an adolescent wellbeing coach for mums and teenage sons and kind of going into adult sons. So I think there are lots of you who are going to have lots of interesting questions for her. As always, feel free to pop questions into the comments and we'll see if we can answer them as we go. And Caroline, hi.
Hi, nice to see you.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to have you on our live/podcast, depending on whether you're listening or watching. I always forget that I have to do both and get confused. It's been one of those days. Anywho, do you want to maybe do a quick kind of intro, who you are, what you do, so that people know what kind of questions they can ask you?
Of course, yes. I'm an adolescent wellbeing coach for teen boys and young men, and I also have a Facebook community group called Mums of Growing Up Sons, and it's because I believe that the connection between mums and sons as they are growing up is unique and benefits from having a really good look at what happens to the relationship between mums and sons and how that can be really positive, but also how that can actually be very rocky as well. My background is that I trained at Cambridge to be a high school history teacher and did many years in education in high schools, all in the West Midlands. And I absolutely love being in the classroom with teenagers. And it was great until I could see how the support, the time wasn't there to provide help for youngsters when they were just, going through the normal traumas of adolescence. As a form tutor, never enough time to spend with young people or their parents. I was one of those teachers that, parents' evening, it would just be me and the senior management team left as I was, talking more to parents, because I'm sure you found as well, once you've met parents, you understand the student in front of you so much better. And, I would often want lots and lots of time with the parents as well and ask them questions as well as them asking me questions. So yes, I did that. I led on teaching and learning, became assistant head teacher for teaching and learning, but realised completely that unless a young person feels well mentally and physically, they're not going to learn no matter what you try and make them do. And it's exploring the ways, I explored the ways of how you can do that in a school environment to make sure that students knew about their mental health, looked after each other, positive mindsets, and the difference that it can make. But I decided to leave because it was getting worse, not better. And it was just so frustrating to be in a system and you could see what help parents and young people needed, but we weren't able to provide it. So I thought there must be another way, and came out of it and set up my own coaching company called Caroline Jacobs Life Coach for Young Adults. And over time, as you do, realise, I'm actually working with a lot of young men, more than girls, though I'm happy to support teenage girls. But it was like, I'll look into this, and started researching about teenage boys' mental health. And the shocking statistic that, it is the biggest killer of men under the age of 45 is unfortunately suicide. Also looking at what happens to young men at university as well. And realizing, well, actually, we need to be, as mothers, I am a mother of 3 sons, we need to be almost like changing the culture of men and boys being silent and strong, and of not showing emotion, because that's what's doing the damage. So that when they really do need the help, when they leave our care, when they go off to work or to university, they don't know how to ask for help. So that's what I do. And I help mums as well understand, what an incredible journey it is to have your little boy grow up into a young man and become independent and not need you anymore, because that's a massive journey for you to take and to deal with. So, I found my niche and I love it.
Fabulous.
Well, you are singing our tune in so many ways.
So much nodding going on here. Can I ask a question, though? Having been a tutor, lower school and post-16 for many, many, many years, in my experience, the most of the issues I saw in terms of students struggling was to do with teenage girls, not teenage boys. Is that because boys, I think you just alluded to the fact, are not as good at asking for help? Or was it just the school that I'm in that just happened to be the...
It is a case of that. It's the culture. It was the quiet ones I noticed. It was the invisible boys I noticed. And they're so good at literally just vanishing into the background. And I think it's because my first son was very much like that and was able to go under the radar. And they do that because they don't want to stand out, but they don't want to stand out because they don't want to draw attention to themselves from other students, from their peers. And so they pretend that everything's okay, but they just keep silent. And by noticing those individuals and offering them a place when I was a teacher, and offering them a place to come, feel safe, and to talk without other people like that being around, it sort of opened up my eyes to, wow, they are really suffering, but have nowhere to go to get the support that they need. And you could just see people going down and down and down. And I was like, no, we've got to stop this somehow.
Absolutely. I mean, we have boys who are twin boys who are about to turn 19, which is slightly terrifying. So they're both off at uni, but there's a really obvious difference with the way that they talk to us and the things that they're willing to talk to us about when the other one's not there versus when they're together. Because when they're together, it's very much, I have to be a lad. You can't have any kind of emotional conversation because the other one will say something. And it's a culture we've tried to squash as parents because we know it's not helpful, but we've really struggled to know exactly how to counteract that. So have you got any particular tips for parents of boys to kind of get them to open up a little bit more, to get them to start to see that they don't have to be like that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, just quickly, I think it's a whole generation thing. It's a whole UK-wide thing, if not throughout the world. But, the banter culture, I'm not somebody that can do that. I've actually found out quite recently that the way that my brain works, I'm actually neurodivergent, that I can't comprehend it. Why would you say that if it isn't actually true? Oh, you're just joking. Okay. And but that seems to be something that's accepted and encouraged in males. And my advice to parents is to be able to be honest and open, in able to role model how you're feeling. Because as parents, when our children are young, we don't show them when we're upset. If we're upset and it's like, oh, mustn't cry in front of my child, because the child will get upset because they don't like to see mummy and daddy, being upset. If we carried that on, though, to when they're teenagers, if they never saw us get upset, we can't show them the best ways to deal with being upset. If they don't see us fall out and argue as adults, they're going to think that you shouldn't do that, or that it would be the end of the world if you have a disagreement with somebody. But if we model that for them, they can then learn how to cope with it themselves. So it's the role modeling that I think is one of the most important things, and communicate and understanding how the adolescent brain works, because once you start looking into that, it is just so surprising and
terrifying.
Yes,
it is terrifying how much they change. But and you feel it's you as a parent. You always think, oh, it's my fault, or why are they doing that to me? And they genuinely can't see it. It's like, your facial expressions, you think, oh, I've asked them to do that. I've asked them if they can tidy their room up. He'll do it now. And then you go back and they're like, well, what? And you just think, are they doing this deliberately? But they genuinely, you're not a priority for them. As a parent, you are not their be all and end all anymore. Their peer groups are, their friends are.
And Wi-Fi.
And that social interaction online, which, I try to have, I actually say in lockdown, it's been a brilliant thing. It's kept them connected. It has kept them in touch with people. It has helped them meet new people, and develop lots and lots of good skills. But as parents, we're way down the pecking order. And it's because, their amygdala is pumping out so many hormones and chemicals and signs that it does not relate to anything rational or sort of self-controlling, because their prefrontal cortex hasn't developed enough. That's the perfect stage when they become an adult, is when the brain has continued to develop so that you've got your emotions can be controlled by your prefrontal cortex. That can happen to youngsters. I thought that finished about 19, 20. I was quite shocked to realize can go up 24, 26, even 29. So everybody's different, and that adolescent journey is unique to every child you have. It's not going to be the same with the children that you have either. And we change as well as parents, don't we? We stop. We have to let them fall down. We have to let them make mistakes in order for them to learn to pick themselves up and become independent. So let them fall.
You talk about the development finishes 24 to call it 29-ish. Is that with boys specifically? I mean, I would imagine girls finish much earlier.
They do, yes. It's only
I don't know why.
it's only quite recently, with the development of science and neuroscience, that they've been able to map the changes in the brains and compared to males and females. I was talking to a client earlier on today, and their son is at the end of year 8 and they're going into year 9. I just went, oh yes, year 9. I said, well, you could have a class of boys in year 9 who the most mature, you'd be quite happy to let go to university, the extreme at one end. On the other end, you've got somebody who'd be quite happy to go and play football with year 4 in primary school. It is that extensive in year 9. And it's one that generally, teachers always go, please not year 9, a whole boys set in year 9. Because it's different when they walk into year 10. I always remember after the summer, and I'd have my GCSE students come to see me. So many boys would have just gone and shot up physically, and voices dropped, but also mentally as well. They actually sort of took on, okay, I'm doing GCSEs now. I get this a little bit more. I know, So yeah, the year 9 years.
I'm having traumatic flashbacks now
Are you?
from those, like the year 8 and the year 9 classes were always, because year 7 are still fresh and keen, at least to
yes.
begin with, and they want to learn and they're excited about things. And then by the time they get to GCSE, there's this sense of purpose kicking in.
Mm.
And as you said, you see that step up in maturity, but year 8 and 9 are a challenge,
which is where our daughter's about to head into, and we're frightened, frankly.
Yeah,
there is.
But you know,
it's just get through those years intact.
Yes.
You know, mentally intact, physically intact. Just get through them. It gets better. And sometimes I think it's better for our children. We can help them more as we've been teachers and know the system. And then sometimes I think, oh no, maybe it's better that they don't know.
Yeah, because just dreading that, knowing what's coming, it's making me nervous already, and she's not got there yet. No. But yes, it's going to be interesting.
Can I just quickly go back to banter, which is possibly the word that really just winds me up, partly as a teacher, because when you're having a conversation with a student who's just been daft or whatever, it was banter, sir. It's the standard answer for every boy ever. And as a parent, we got the same thing. Banter is clearly it's a new word, but it's not a new thing. Did it used to be called bullying? Are they basically the same?
Oh, I like that question. I would say yes. You know, if you wrote down what they say when they're doing banter on a piece of paper, that is emotional cruelty to somebody. It's making somebody think something and feel something negative.
Yeah.
In order to make the person who said it look more powerful and look like they fit in.
Caroline's just described one of the twins almost perfectly.
Basically.
We're not going to name names. We're not going to name names. Daniel, if you watch.
But yeah, and for me, the worst bit of it is that I can point you in the direction of several grown-up, theoretically, men who still only talk to each other like that.
Yes.
And have never had an actual emotional kind of connection together, because that's their only form of communication with each other. It may well be that they have someone that they talk to about emotions. It may not be, but I know that there is no way they've ever had a conversation about anything serious ever without it descending into banter. And
that's not me, right?
Mostly no.
Okay.
It's very strange. I think because girls do go and confide in each other, maybe not in a big gang of a group, but they will be able to have one or two people that if they're feeling really down, they will go, look, I didn't like what she said then. I was really, I don't know why and how it happens, but girls are more prepared to go and talk, to go and ask for support, to talk to each other. And the boys don't. And the energy, the mental energy boys can spend, certainly quiet boys who don't find it natural to do that. It's like they're in a pack and they're trying not to stand out. So that's where this invisibility comes from. I used to just think it was, if a boy isn't particularly sporty, if they're not in with the football crowd or the rugby crowd or the cricket crowd, but it's more than that now. You've got to be able to banter, to stand, to be able to just survive in a group of people. And I think that's why I do actually, it's awful to say, I think banter is the cause of all this, poor mental health that we're seeing. But it is a massive pressure for people to continue to be like that, and yet find the right place where they can be open and honest and sensitive and just say, I don't feel great. This is awful. I mean, what do we do as a society to actually get rid of that and encourage men to talk more?
It's a tricky one. I mean, part of it, I guess, as you said, comes down to role models and having role models who are willing to talk about mental health and things, particularly men, because that's not something that we've seen a lot of, and it's started to happen a little more. Certainly with public figures, that they've been talking about mental health more and the impact that it's had on them. But I mean, I can imagine it's really tough, particularly if you're a single mum with a son, and so you don't have that male role model in the house, and finding, particularly this last year, having someone else that your child can look to for a good example is a tricky thing to find.
Very, very tricky. I mean, I'm really encouraged by when Prince William and Prince Harry set up Headspace with the FA to, because I mean, that was brilliant. That was just sheer brilliance, saying, okay, football, let's get football saying, let's talk about our mental health, and let's get footballers that guys worship saying, I'm really struggling. I get depression, I get anxiety, I get stress. I watched the documentary with Roman Kemp, the Spandau Ballet's son, Martin Kemp's son, and that floored me. And I was like, wow, what an example of a young, hip guy. He's a DJ and everything like that, but just being totally honest about his poor mental health and who he couldn't go to for help, and where it led him and his family. I think it's it's why I'm focusing on young men and their mums, helping mums realize we have got to normalize this. We have got to say, if you're feeling down, catch them when they're talking negatively about themselves. That's the thing, isn't it? Just say, can we just flip that over? Can we just, stop the negative talk? I want you to say 3 positive things about yourself before another word comes out of your mouth. When we comment, parents' comments to their children as well, I think there's only 1 positive comment to every 9 negative comments. And that's building up over weeks and years and decades. No wonder that they can, automatically talk themselves down, no good at anything, what's the point in trying? And you hear that from all young people who are in behaviour units in school, who are in extra support sessions, who have been withdrawn from the classroom because they're misbehaving, they can't concentrate. It's their self-esteem. And when you pick them up and actually have the time to talk and listen to them, it's their self-esteem, and it needs to be a teamwork, of parents, school, GP, medical health professionals, boosting that person's belief in themselves. And that's what we need.
Yeah, it's a big challenge though, because the voice, the little voice in the back of your head, because we all have the little voice in the back of our heads. I think I went to some kind of Women's Day and someone was talking about self-esteem and things, and she explained it, and I tried it, and I think it's wonderful, so I'm going to share it. She explained it as, think of the little voice that's telling you, oh, you can't possibly wear that, you're far too fat to pull that outfit off, or whatever it is. Think of it as the little devil on your shoulder, and whenever it starts talking to you, you flick it off your shoulder and stamp on it, hit it with a cartoon frying pan, whatever it needs. Just, you're telling your subconscious, I don't want to listen to that anymore. And don't actually wander around swatting things, imaginary things off your shoulder, because people are going to start to worry. But it genuinely does work. It makes a difference, because I was in a cycle of fairly constant negative self-talk, and I have broken it, because I've retrained my brain to go, no, do you know what? We're not listening to that. We're not at home to Captain Negative. Thank you very much. And
Absolutely.
And you can start then to bring back in those more positive thoughts, but it does take a conscious effort to do. And for that to happen, you have to realize that you're doing it and have someone say, try this.
Yeah.
Why don't you try, as you said, just flip that upside down and let's talk about the positives instead. And it's, I mean, one of ours is quite the pessimist by nature. And we've really had a challenge to try and get him to be more positive about himself, about life in general, because he was very Eeyore in his approach. Everything was doom and gloom. And
but he was also the one on the receiving end of this banter as well.
Absolutely.
So
which
so
but
much
the combination of those two things is incredibly harmful. And as I say, that's why I decided to be a coach. I didn't want to go down the, just go and get another degree or more qualifications and become actually the psychiatrist or the psychologist. I wanted to be able to coach people to get into good habits. Like you say, the first step is recognizing, oh, I do think that about myself, don't I? Or maybe I do. It takes a while to get, people that I work with to go, oh yeah, well, how do I change it? And then you find examples. I tend to find, just tailor every client differently as to what will work. So your little person on the shoulder, your little devil that you flick off to somebody else could be they're in a grey cloud and they've got to change the colour of that cloud because that cloud is swamping them. Whatever, just clicks with them. And then holding them to account to it, saying, right, well, next week when we chat, I want to, look at this. And it's just wonderful when they come back and go, made a difference. It did actually make a difference. A previous client of mine, after I'd seen him a few sessions, and I just said, do you know what? I'm really pleased. I haven't heard the L word once today. He's like, what L word? I said, there's a word that you said constantly in the first time that we met, and then quite a lot in the second time around. I said, I haven't heard that once today. And he's like, well, what word is it? And he could not guess it. And I said, the word was lazy. I said, you consistently use the word lazy to describe what you've been doing or what you haven't been doing. I said, and you don't use that anymore. But they generally just go, oh, I never realized that. Yeah. And that's all that talking and, having an experienced coach can do. It's not rocket science. We're not doing any psychobabble or anything like that. It's just helping people to flip their thinking and get into better habits. And it can be done at school. We can train sixth formers to do this for younger students. I think we need to train teachers. We need to help teachers themselves be aware of it, because we all know of the negative ones, the rocks in the staff room who refuse to change and refuse to attempt change.
Yes, the mood hoover.
The mood hoovers. I love that expression. They're a real mood hoover, and
in the head.
Yeah.
I love it when students challenge teachers that are mood hoovers. Come on, sir, you have to cheer up. Don't use that word. That's really negative.
Anyone who's been a teacher knows exactly what we just talked about.
And just pictured at least one person. Yeah. Well, anyone in any office, I think.
Yeah.
I think so. Yes, I do. I think so. But the power of recognizing ourselves, our own sabotaging habits, it is really important. And you just go. So, it's the things like at the end of the day, writing down 3 things you're grateful for that you've done that day. Come on, what good things have you done today? What have you achieved? What's made you feel happy, or what kind things have you done for somebody else today? It's that if you do have that collection of everybody where you meet once a day, even if it might just be for the 7-minute evening meal or whatever, before they all just disperse. But it's, what made you laugh today? It's the habit.
Ooh, I like
of
that.
doing that.
I mean, we always do the positives of the day at the dinner table,
Yeah.
and that was partly because of Captain Negative, as we occasionally call him. But
Not
obviously,
his face.
not his face. It's because otherwise that's not helpful.
Although I've just done it on the podcast,
but
which isn't ideal.
I like the idea about what made you laugh, rather than just mix it up with positives. Just to change it around a little bit. I like that.
Yeah, I like
Yeah, what made you laugh today? And the younger we do it, I mean, we've got a wide range of children. Our eldest is 27, our youngest has just turned 8. So, but it is the 8-year-old that comes out with such wonderful, positive questions. So Mummy, what was the nicest thing you saw today? And things, and you just think, wow, if we can have a generation of young people, that's just the normal part of their conversation. They're reviewing their day. Imagine the strength of their mental health once they become 15, 16, going to university. Brilliant.
That's a fabulous takeaway right there.
I have a friend, Heidi Mark, who's done some stuff in the Facebook page with us before, and she tends to sign things off with "have an unexpectedly lovely day" and encourage people to look for the unexpectedly lovely around them. And I think that's wonderful too. It's such a good idea, and it does just help shift the way that you're thinking. If you're looking for positives rather than looking for negatives, which is, let's face it, what most of us do as human beings. So,
as parents as well, it's very easy to find those negatives. Yeah. They are everywhere, particularly on my daughter's bedroom floor.
Behave. An ongoing issue that I think everyone's familiar with who listens to us regularly. Paula
probably doesn't see it. And it's a thing again, isn't it, as parents, of thinking that our children are going to have our values and the way that we see things. And they don't. And you know what? They're individuals. And you get to a point of how much are you going to let it continue annoying you? It's the, on the balance of things, yes.
Yeah, it's the 1 to 9 ratio, I think, is quite a scary stat. And it's something I've not heard before. But it's something that I think, again, it's a takeaway for me, that just to look at my own behavior as a parent, whether it's teenage boys or nearly teenage daughter, just what that ratio is. And I suspect it wouldn't necessarily reflect too well, but it's something you've got to be aware of. Otherwise, you don't change.
Well, there's a study recently, I want to say it was De Montfort University, about the power of praise and the difference that it makes. And I think it was making the actual concerted effort to give 5 pieces of praise a day to your child, which sounds just ridiculously easy, but I bet you if you counted, it would be trickier than that, because you've got to catch them first out of their room and with their face out of their phone.
Yes.
But it had such a massive impact on everything, on their self-esteem, on their confidence, on their actual exam grades. So it really made a difference. But also, it's exactly what we were talking about.
It can't just be positives like, I'm really proud of you. You've got to qualify why you're proud. You've got to explain it rather than throw away kind of, it's very easy to say. You've got to quantify it and explain exactly what they've done that has made you feel.
Yeah.
So
it's like when assessment for learning was introduced in secondary schools, about 10 years ago. And it was a case of, don't just put good. There's no point just marking and putting good. Tell them what is good. What have they done well? Why is this a great piece of work? And therefore, you do all your using the national curriculum and then putting, what you've done well because you've done this, 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 and this. It's a habit that, can be really positive and constructive. Even things like my son, well done for closing that door properly. Or, you have to tell them what it is for and why you like it. Otherwise, they just ignore it because it's just, it's faint praise, isn't it?
Yeah. If it's not specific enough, it might as well not have happened. Right, we've got a question from Vicky.
Oh,
So Vicky says, there seems to be so much pressure for boys to fit in. I have a year 6 who's quiet and deeply sensitive, so banter affects him badly. He's struggling with the boy posturing that started in school with the move to high school beginning, and I can see a struggle ahead. He needs a flip and see the positive. He definitely feels down about himself. Any tips for starting high school?
Oh, that is a tricky one. And especially with the sort of 16 months that we've just had.
Yeah.
Of stopping, starting. Are we going to stop school? Are we going back? Are we?
And the lack of transition as well. So our daughter's in year 7 now, and she just didn't have that usual, going into school and looking around and meeting people. She didn't get to do that. She just kind of suddenly junior school was finished and she was chucked in at the deep end. And it's not what anyone expected, because they're all, for her, she's stuck in the same classroom pretty much all day, because that's the way they've chosen to minimize movement. So she's not, it's as you've said, been really weirdly different for kids this year.
It has. And the teachers don't know how to do it any differently, because it is the way that they've always done it. And if you suddenly can't do what you've always done, they're not going to get it. They're not going to get it right. No one can get it right. I think it's about, certainly with quieter boys, quieter, gentle, wonderful boys who we need in the world, and I think that's what it is. It's about making him realize you are brilliant just as you are. Look at people like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and, amazingly talented people that have really weird traits, and, they were geeks and they're focused on certain things and they're not into banter and they don't feel that they fit in. But the world needs people like that, and we need different people. I know it's very difficult. I know it's how people say, oh, you can't request what class your son goes into, or who they're necessarily with. The best case scenario is that you're in a class form group that is balanced, that you've got the sporty banter boys, but you've got a nice amount of, and I'm saying proudly, geeks and nerds who are into the DC and the Marvel and whatever, are into chess club, or into I'm just thinking of all my family stuff.
We're Harry Potter in our house. It's all about
absolutely. Who knows everything about Harry Potter? It's hard. Whoever, if you had a classroom of boys who were all the quiet ones and were just into whatever, Dungeons and Dragons, if you've got a whole class of boys who are obsessed with D&D, and then you've got that one sporty boy in with them, he would feel dreadful because he's got no one. So it's about trying to find a classroom, a year group, an environment where there is a really nice balance, because when that happens and your child feels that they are with people like them, they feel less pressured to conform to the banter crowd or the popular crowd. And talk. I would always say talk. Go into school and say, this is important for my son, because so many people sit back and just think, oh, it will be fine. No. Go in, make yourself known, because that's the only way, I'm sorry, that as teachers, we then go, oh yeah, no, I've got to make sure that we make sure that they sit with those people and that type of thing.
Yeah,
would you agree?
Other pressure. Much other, particularly at the moment for teachers, the workload is insane, trying to cope with all the exams shenanigans. The other stuff, the softer stuff, the stuff we all got into teaching for, actually
emotional intelligence. Yes.
All of that stuff is falling by the wayside because teachers are just exhausted. So absolutely, it's definitely worth going in and saying something. Pamela chimed in and said, what clubs are available at his high school? Because I strongly recommend a club, and that's as you were saying, it's about finding your tribe. And when you've got your tribe, your people that just get you and you get them, that's when you start to really thrive, I think, certainly as a teenager.
Yeah.
And it helps if a school has members of staff who are like that themselves, or who remember what it was like to be the type of student where the sports clubs didn't invite them to go to it. It wasn't their thing. I'm very fortunate. My husband has been a head teacher and principal of several high schools, and he's always sacrificed his Friday afternoon. After Friday, you just want to get out of school, don't you, as a member of staff? No. He would stay behind and do, I want to say, World of Warcraft. I don't know if that is
Warcraft rather than World of Warcraft. I think
Warhammer. That was it. Warhammer Club.
So World of Warcraft is online,
and it's
speaking of
Warhammer, geeky stuff. But having a Warhammer Club where members of staff would go, and you would have a range of students, mostly boys, but some girls as well, who were from year 7 right the way up to 6th form, all talking interage and everything like that. That was great, because then when they saw each other around school in the rest of the week, they felt it's okay. I got someone older who I know. And you form those bonds. You like you say, you find that tribe. You find you get more confident that there are people like you around, and you survive and you get through it. And I just hope that all schools have members of staff that are able and have the time and the energy to put those types of clubs on. And I'm not criticising teachers in any way possible, but you can only do all of it for so long before you burn out. And that's why we come out of it, in order to try and support people who are in it, and parents and students who are going through it.
With the Warhammer thing, at my previous school, there was a Warhammer Club, and there's, as you said, year 7 through to year 13. And the year 7 know the year 11 know the year 12. It was kind of this little club within a club sort of thing. And it was fabulous, because they all felt they belonged and what have you. But because I was one of the school's minibus drivers, I got to go on a school trip to Warhammer World in Nottingham. I'm sure it's got a name, but it's this amazing place that's just got, it's a proper competition. It's all for prizes and gloating lights, etc. But it's attached to a pub. So essentially, you go there, not for teaching necessarily, but as a parent, you can go there at the weekend. Child goes into Warhammer World for the whole day, and you can just go to the pub. It was a
perfect setup.
That is a perfect setup. Yes, we need more of that.
Is there a pub next to Harry Potter World? Because we could lose 2 of the kids for at least a day.
There we go. Yeah,
and they'd be happy as.
Can I just go back to the year 7? Talking about contacting school if you've got an issue. Totally agree with that, because so many times as a year 7, 8 teacher, well, whichever year group, to be honest with you, you're that busy at the front teaching. You are aware of what's going on in with students, but sometimes kids are very clever. They can be doing things under the radar, as it were. Yes. And when a parent contacts you to say, look, there's something going on in your class, I never felt offended by it. If I hadn't seen it, I can't start to sort of address it and deal with it. And every time I got an email like that, I was so massively protective of this child who was clearly having a miserable time for whatever reason. I made sure that never happened again. It was, and unless I was told, I would not. I would have carried on doing what I was doing, teaching, and this would have carried on at the back of my room. Because kids are cruel, and they will do it on the sly. I'd have never been any the wiser. So absolutely contact school immediately.
I completely agree. You've then raised the issue, and then if your son is still unhappy, you can do something about it. This is maybe quite radical. I really hope that the lockdown and learning via the technology has made more parents confident that do you know what? If my son's mental health, if he's really struggling with anxiety, or if I don't think the school is actually doing enough to support his emotional welfare, do you know what? I'm going to take him out for a term. I'm going to have him at home. It's more important to make him feel better and stronger about himself mentally than it is to force his attendance to be 100%. Because ultimately, schools go on about attendance so much because it is the one definite thing that can be monitored.
Yeah.
Yep. And then
all it is. That is all it is. And as parents, they put the fear into parents of, you must go to school, you must. But if school is harming you, why are you forcing your child to go to school? Because there are so many companies have developed online learning now, supports for parents, for home learning. And I actually know of quite a few people who've gone, my kids never enjoyed school. They've had a much better time in lockdown. Do you know what? There's just one form to sign and they're at home. They don't realize how easy it is just to sign your kids off. I'm going to home teach them at home. They can have a term out. They could have a year out. They could have, a month out. Yeah. And I'm sure schools do not want that known very much, but you've got the right to just give your kids a break. If you don't feel their welfare and their emotional intelligence is not being supported.
Yeah.
Schools have got to step up to the plate. It's as simple as that. Bums on seats equals cash. And if they want the funding, they've got to look after their students. It's as simple as that.
They've just got to be allowed to and funded to as well, because that's part of the challenge.
I know there's that other thing of, government the money has to be there. I don't know whether you saw, but Dr. Alex from Love Island, who is obviously a brilliantly qualified doctor, is supporting mental health because fortunately his brother died. His brother committed suicide last year. And he was invited to Downing Street by the Prime Minister, and there was this big announcement of £7 million was being given for mental health care. And then they worked out that
20p per school.
That's pence, yes, per school. Yeah. And in fact, they're spending 18 more times on road maintenance, filling potholes in this country than they are on the mental health budget for everybody.
Yeah.
It's those media grabbing things that you go, oh, they are doing something for our children's mental health. No, they're really not.
I mean, it sounds like a good announcement, doesn't it? And we try not to get too political, but the media suite, 2.6 million quid for a new media suite compared to 7 million quid for all of the it's not the same thing. It's not on the same Richter scale.
No. And the thing is, it was, as I say, about up to 10 years ago, it wasn't unusual for schools to have a full-time nurse or several full-time counsellors that were there to support students and staff to with their problems. And so it would be there was a lovely team of people. If someone fell ill during the day, full-time nurse there, they dealt with people that were ill, they could look after them, get them sent home. It didn't have to be a teacher's issue, but through the budget cuts, staff were having it's very, very difficult.
We've got a friend.
Sorry.
So we're going to say we've got a friend who's a school nurse, and as you say, that's a fairly unusual thing these days because schools don't have nurses. They might have a couple of hours here or there. So when she told me she was going back into this job, I was really impressed. But it turns out she's not a school nurse. She's a school nurse for a trust, and she's the only nurse they have for 10, 15 schools. So how many hours a week do they get each? 1.5, 2 hours maybe, and that's it. So she just spends most of the time on the road driving between, and not a huge amount of time actually in the classroom or in the however schools do it, helping the students who need it.
Yeah.
And that's all to do with academization. But again, I'm getting political. Sorry.
But the thing is, you say political, but those are the facts.
Yeah.
And it's only people who work in it, but when you work in it, you can't talk about it. And it's only once you've been out of it a certain time that you're brave enough to put your head above the parapet and go, well, this is the situation. I remember it when it was much better, and now it isn't. And we're doing individually what we can to help those who are still in the system, and our own children as well. It's, you do what you do for parents. I do what I can for what I've learned and for my boys. But I'm still not sure what my little one will do, whether I actually think secondary school education is right for him, because at the moment, mental health wise, I don't think it is. I have a highly sensitive 8-year-old who's full of imagination, but isn't part of the banter crowd, and I'm going to look after him and make sure he's in the right environment. So we do understand, and it is all about helping all of our children and ourselves be as resilient as possible, be as aware as possible, and know that these mind habits are great. You can flip your thinking, you can flip your attitude towards life. The happiness thing, what you were saying before, actually, it's that thing that people go, well, when I'm happy, or when I have these things, I will be happy. And the older you get, you realize, no. Actually, you can be happy every day. There's no goal to be happy. It's about recognizing those happy little moments during the day. When your favorite song comes on and you have a little jig in the kitchen, when that's what happiness is. Oh, I'm glad Emily does that as well. It's recognizing that when you're out for a walk and suddenly you get this lovely sense of a rose bush that you pass, or something like that evokes a memory, that's happiness. And by recognizing it every day, we get the benefit of it. It's not it's not a destination, it's the journey, isn't it, as they say?
Absolutely. And I think that is probably the perfect place to wrap this up, because I think that is a great place to end. Let's end with some happiness, because
definitely,
why not? So a massive thank you for giving up your time.
No, it's a pleasure.
If anyone's interested in finding out more or getting in touch, then all of the contact details are down in the comments. If you're listening to this on the podcast, then it's in the show notes. So do feel free to get in touch. There is a Facebook group if you are the mum of a teenage boy and you could use a little bit of extra backup. So come
and join us, because it's a tough old journey, and it's even worse when you realise I could actually be causing some of this conflict myself. That's
never a funny thought.
Yeah. So and there is actually I've got a film package I did last Easter at the beginning of lockdown last year, of just 3 short videos about explaining about the teenage adolescent brain, but also why it's so important for mums to get support as well for becoming the parent of a teenager, because it's just as important as when you were pregnant and you were looking into all the information about having a baby. It really is that significant.
We could not agree more. And the link to that is also in the list of links. So thank you again. It has been absolutely amazing.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much.